Hey there, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. And again, welcome to the new subscribers. Hey guys, we're almost at 10,000 subscribers. We have 300 more to go. So I noticed in the analytics, a lot of you are not subscribed. So please subscribe to the channel and share these videos. It helps the channel to grow organically, which it is, but very slowly. And, I don't have the resources to boost the channel. It costs money on YouTube, unfortunately. So I'm hoping all of you guys will share, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It will really help us get to that 10,000 subscriber mark and hopefully be seen by more people in the YouTube feed. So thanks so much, guys, for doing that. Anyway, we're going to talk today about the effects, especially the long-term effects on the scapegoat after being, targeted by their narcissistic family unit. Now, we talked about the narcissistic family unit in the narcissistic family unit videos, parts 1 and 2 on this channel. And if you haven't watched those, please do so, because there's a lot of information as to what the scapegoat goes through in a narcissistic family unit and the damage that it causes. But we didn't talk in depth about the long-term effects that happen to a scapegoat simply because they were raised and conditioned in this abusive environment growing up, having a head narcissist usually, and a bunch of flying monkeys believing a false narrative about that scapegoat. So let's get into these effects, these long-term effects. And if you were the scapegoat of your family, please put it in the comments below. And if you feel that these points resonate with you, if you can relate to these effects, let me know in the comments. Okay, so basically, scapegoats long-term, guys, will carry a great amount of self-doubt in their endeavors in life. Their whole life they were told that they weren't good enough. A lot of sarcasm usually happens in these types of families where they'll say, how are you going to do that? Well, let's see it happen. Oh, well, you really think you can do that? I've heard all kinds of things from people that grew up in narcissistic families. In one case, the person wanted to be a doctor, and, the father kept saying, well, don't you have to be smart to be a doctor? I mean, that's the type of thing that happens in a narcissistic family. They think, they're just joking or being cute, or that's the excuse that they give. But it's not funny. I mean, you don't raise a child like that. You don't raise a child hearing that they're, every day they hear that they're not good enough, they're not pretty enough or smart enough, or you doubt their capabilities on a daily basis, and you tell them that, instilling it in their brain. Very cruel to do to a child. And it has long-term effects. And if there's a false narrative about that child, that scapegoated child in a narcissistic family unit, if there is a false narrative that the flying monkeys believe, the flying monkeys are the enablers in the family, it's devastating, especially if you come from a big family, because there's a lot of siblings that would probably be labeled as flying monkeys. They go along with the head narcissist. They don't stand up and defend the scapegoat. And the scapegoat is basically on their own. They have nobody to turn to defend them or to believe in them. And it's sad. Scapegoats many times will defend, the flying monkeys or keep in contact with the flying monkeys, which is fine. But you have to remember that the flying monkeys, they did nothing to defend you many times. They allowed the abuse to happen, which isn't cool. That's not good, guys. So we might think that they're innocent bystanders and just people who are easily swayed or weak, or they don't have their own mind, or they're afraid of the narcissist. That's what I found out in numerous situations. But actually, did they defend you? Did they stand up and say, hey, this is wrong? Did they speak up about the abuse? Or did they allow it to happen? Well, a lot of times these flying monkeys allow it to happen. So as much as you feel that, well, I can keep in contact with them, just remember, did they really have your best interests at hand? Think about that one, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, scapegoats long-term tend to be perfectionistic, or try to be anyway. No one is perfect, guys, but a lot of times they need the validation that they're still trying to get validated from their narcissist in the family or their narcissistic family unit, because they grew up ridiculed and joked about and mocked and, told that they couldn't do anything. They weren't supported or believed in at all. So they tend to overdo things in life. They tend to try to be perfectionists in what they do to prove their family wrong, to prove the narcissist in the family wrong, to prove the flying monkeys wrong, to prove everybody wrong that put them down. It's kind of like they're on a mission. I'll show them who they mocked, right? It's that type of attitude that a lot of scapegoats have, and they actually go on to achieve quite a bit if they can break away from that abuse. But what they find out, guys, is their achievements aren't validated. They keep wanting the approval of the narcissist in the family and the flying monkeys, and they find out that it doesn't matter what they do. They go on unrecognized most times. And the scapegoat is still very disappointed, even decades later, years later. The people that recognize that the scapegoat's accomplishments are usually, not in that narcissistic family unit at all. It's from strangers. So it's kind of like in the Bible, guys, when the Lord went to his hometown and he couldn't perform miracles because nobody believed in him. And he said, a prophet hath not any respect, not even in his hometown or among his family. Same thing. You very well could have a purpose where, the Lord gave you a spirit of being uncomfortable in your hometown and with your family because you're not meant to be there. Perhaps your purpose is elsewhere. And if you were comfortable with your family, think about this one, you'd want to stay there. You'd want to stay in your town of origin. You'd want to stay with your family members because they would be loving and kind and you wouldn't have any complaints or reason to leave. So throughout the Bible, so many people that God used really were uncomfortable in their towns of origin and among their family members, and they had to leave and they had to take up, and follow the Lord basically, or live a life of, kind of, independently and wandering around. Our Lord did that even. He left his town. He had a mission to carry out. So a lot of you may have a calling elsewhere, and you were set aside by the Lord. You were made differently by the Lord. You were given a big heart and empathy by the Lord and compassion that will be used later on for a purpose. And narcissistic family units have a hard time with that, especially the head narcissist. They don't have empathy or compassion. They don't understand it. So your feelings go a lot deeper than usually the flying monkeys and the narcissists in your family, no? And you need to be around like-minded people and people that celebrate you and not tolerate you. So the scapegoat is usually tolerated in a narcissistic family and rarely celebrated. Now, another thing that is a long-term effect on the scapegoat is, they tend to self-isolate and become introverted because they usually feel that nobody understands their situation, with their family or situation with their depth of feelings. As I said, the scapegoats are usually empathetic, kind people with huge hearts. And they were surrounded by narcissistic people without any empathy or compassion. And they were probably silenced whenever they wanted to talk or shushed, or basically people just disregarded what they had to say as not important. So they really learned to keep their mouth shut. They've learned to really self-isolate and not put their hand on the stove anymore. If you were always in a setting with your family and you were shushed or dismissed, or you got the eyeball rolls every time you spoke, you'd think twice about doing that. You'd say, I'm better off just keeping to myself. It doesn't hurt as much, right? So you get tired of the false narratives. The scapegoat gets tired of the mockery, and it's easier just to remain more isolated and more on their own with their thoughts. And many scapegoats are writers and artists, and they're very talented in creative fields many times, and that's something that they can pursue and progress with on their own, in their isolation. And also, it strengthens their time with God. They develop a close relationship with our Lord because it's easier to be alone and have God to speak with, and God who understands being scapegoated. If anyone understands being scapegoated, it's our Lord, right? So they've learned that they can be alone and trust in the Lord and probably thrive more creatively that way, or pursue their goals easier that way without the distraction of the abuse, without the distraction of the negative comments and people that are living in the world all around them who aren't, people with any depth usually. They're usually pretty shallow, talking about what they bought, where they went, their achievements, the latest car that they bought, who's got what, gossip. And the scapegoat usually doesn't participate in those things, or, their mind doesn't work that way. They can see the dysfunction. They can see the cruelty in a narcissistic family unit. They can see the lack of empathy. and the lack of compassion, the lack of depth, and they call it out. And that's not appreciated in a narcissistic family unit. They tend to be independent because they were never able to ask for anything growing up. Think about that. It's another way and reason why the scapegoat tends to be very self-sufficient later on, at least in a lot of cases I've witnessed. It's because, they were never listened to anyway. They really couldn't ask for anything. And a lot of times, I'm sorry, this is another point, they felt like a burden growing up in their family many times. Like, what are you doing here? Or you don't fit in kind of feeling. They were an outsider, and they had a feeling that, gee, I shouldn't be here. I'm bothering people just waking up and being in this family every day, And they're treated as such. They're treated like they shouldn't have been born. They're treated like they were a burden. They're treated like they're of no use to their family, or they do not have anything of value to offer the family. All of their achievements go unrecognized. They're joked about, mocked about, and the brunt of a lot of sarcastic jokes and gossip. And they really don't have anywhere to turn. So growing up, they're alone. And later on, they decide, you know what? I can't ask for anything from anybody. I don't want to depend on anybody because of how they were treated growing up. So it really causes a lot of scapegoats to be hyper independent, overly independent, and very wary of anybody that offers help. Because growing up, it was either thrown up to them or refused, or they simply weren't even allowed to ask. A lot of scapegoats don't know what it's like to ask for help or to say they're having a hard time. They're already made fun of. They're already put down. They're already mocked. So why would they even expose any more of their vulnerability or needs? They don't. Now, another long-term effect on the scapegoats after narcissistic abuse in a narcissistic family unit is there's a level of sadness about them. They're mourning the loss of the family they should have in life. So many people are surrounding the scapegoat in social situations, at school, at work, whatever, that have normal, healthy family units where they're helpful, they have parties for each other, they support each other, they're proud of each other, they encourage each other. And they know in a time of crisis or time of need that they can go to a family member and they won't be embarrassed or made fun of or mocked for it. That's what family is supposed to be for, no? Is that, you can go to them. They're your flesh and blood. Well, not in a narcissistic family, guys. It's all superficial. They can't talk intimately to each other. They don't know what's going on in each other's lives. There really isn't any level of closeness between the siblings or family members. And the scapegoat is getting abused, mocked, not supported. They're isolated. They spend a lot of time on their own. It's depressing to the scapegoat, even later on, decades later, because they realize what it should have been like. It should have been close. It should have been a loving family unit instead of people that were sarcastic and joking and gossiping and superficial and putting them down. So there's a sense of sadness throughout the scapegoat's life because holidays, are very hard to get through. Holidays for the scapegoat are usually, somebody triggers them with some comment. And it's not uncommon in narcissistic family units for alcohol to be prevalent. Now, if that's your family, let me know in the comments, because that's very true. A lot of, head narcissists in the family have alcohol problems, and that causes abuse, and a lot of times with siblings as well. And so for the scapegoat, holidays were hell. Basically, they weren't fun. They were the target of the jokes. When they see other families gathering that are healthy, all of those things sometimes can trigger the scapegoat later on. Another effect on the scapegoat is, you want a relationship with your siblings. You really do, but also you're resenting them at the same time because they don't realize and they don't acknowledge what happened. There's a lot of gaslighting, so you love certain family members, you love your family members, but because of one or two severe narcissists, you can't engage. And it really does make the scapegoat a bit resentful. You're an empathetic, kind, caring person, but due to the abuse of one or a few family members, you have to cut your whole family off. You have to not be there at a wedding or not be there at a holiday because of the people that really cause you to be triggered, and it sets you back months, years emotionally. Um, if you are a scapegoat, and you know what I'm talking about with that, being set back emotionally, if you, contact family members, let me know in the comments. You want to reach out to them, you want to have a relationship with them, but then you get disappointed because, of course, they make a comment that's hurtful or they gaslight you. And this could be on the phone, it could be in person, and it just sets you back. It just reminds you of what you left. So there are numerous triggers for the scapegoat after the fact, but the scapegoat's family, the narcissistic family unit, does not understand that the scapegoat's just merely trying to survive. They're trying to wake up every day and be positive and move forward and have a healthy existence with healthy people that don't put them down, that don't gaslight them, that don't try to control or demean or give backhanded compliments. They're actually insults. Or gossip about them or tell jokes or expect the unobtainable from them. That's all the scapegoat is asking, just to have normal, supportive people who are loving and kind around them. But that isn't the case. It's not the case. So there is a love-hate type of relationship with the narcissistic family unit that they came from. And, it really is hard for the scapegoat to have a family in the physical sense, but not have them emotionally or in the right sense. So if that's you, let me know in the comments, guys. Now, another thing that happens to the scapegoat long term is the scapegoat seeks, they desire justice for the people that hurt them in the family, or the people that gaslit them, or the people that lied to them in the family or deceived them. So, the scapegoat is dealing with a lot of deception, a lot of lies, a lot of false narratives, their reputation ruined many times, and they've had a lot of losses. I've heard of so many scapegoats suffering losses, whether a family member talks them into a business deal that, caused great financial loss to the scapegoat, that was deceptive, or, move home and we'll do XYZ, and that never happened, and they totally deceived the scapegoat, again, causing losses. Or put the guilt trip on them to attend things that the scapegoat couldn't afford to attend, causing them financial loss, not even considering that the scapegoat, could have had, lack of finances or would lose their job, if they attended things. I've heard of all kinds of setups, those narcissistic setups I talk about that really do the scapegoat in. And there's never any acknowledgement of those. There's never any, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Or, gee, let me reimburse you the money I promised you. Or the work you did, I know I didn't pay you, so let me pay you. Whatever it is that the family did to the scapegoat that was deceptive, they don't acknowledge it. They don't fess up. And they expect the scapegoat to just keep returning for that abuse and keep returning to have more losses over and over again that were deceptive. And the scapegoat, once they get educated, once they learn about narcissistic abuse, once they start watching the YouTube videos and realizing that scapegoats many times are pulled back in and hoovered back to families, and watch my Family Hoovers video, guys, they realize that, hey, I can't buy that again. I can't put my hand on the stove anymore. I can't be hoovered back and the guilt put on me to go back to be abused again. Psychologically, they can't. They're trying to survive. They're trying to keep their head above water. They're trying to progress and not regress back into the abuse that they left. So the narcissistic family unit doesn't understand this. They could perceive the scapegoat as being a snob or not wanting to be part of the family, or who do they think they are, leaving town and moving somewhere else, or not attending the wedding. You hear all kinds of judgmental statements when actually maybe the scapegoat is just trying to save their own life, right? So the Lord knows what the scapegoat goes through. The Lord was scapegoated himself. He was judged. He was accused of being evil and doing demonic healings, and people judged him so wrong. So he understands persecution. He understands being targeted and scapegoated and false narratives. And what we did to our Lord was, we can't even comprehend what evil people on this earth did to our Lord. And please try to remember that if you are the scapegoat in your family. Always remember how the Lord was scapegoated brutally, cruelly. I mean, we can't even imagine the suffering he went through for us. Now, another possible long-term effect of the scapegoat being raised in a narcissistic family unit is that later on they may sabotage opportunities in life that are presented to them, or sabotage relationships that are good ones that are presented to them. And why? Well, they feel undeserving. Their whole life growing up, they were told they didn't deserve this, they didn't deserve that, they didn't deserve to ask for anything, or they couldn't ask for help. So basically, they have to be self-reliant and rely on God or themselves. So when something comes up that really might be a good opportunity for them, or a good person or a good relationship, they're thinking, no, this can't be real. I'm not, I'm not good enough to have this, or I'm undeserving. There's a sense of being undeserving of good things in life with scapegoats. And if you can resonate with this, put it in the comments below. And if you look back, if you were scapegoated, if you look at your narcissistic family unit, well, why? Because you weren't treated well growing up. You were told that you didn't deserve anything, special, or you weren't special, So many scapegoats have explained to me that growing up, they even heard the words, "you're not special," over and over again. Or, put downs that told the scapegoat that they were unworthy of good things happening in their life. So subconsciously, many times, they sabotage things. I have a friend that I went to school with years ago. I haven't seen her in decades. But it seemed to me, just looking from the outside in, that she had a fear of success. She would basically flake on major opportunities in life. Now, I said scapegoats can be overachievers. Absolutely, perfectionistic overachievers. Or they can go another way, where they're just paralyzed and they sabotage good opportunities in life. They sabotage the chance to escape the narcissistic family. They sabotage a good person in their life. They don't believe it's true. They feel completely unworthy. And subconsciously, they do things to push that away, to mess it up, to sabotage the opportunity, because it's so foreign to them. People actually believing in them, trying to give them this opportunity. So that's another thing that might happen. You may be the perfectionistic one who's the overachiever after narcissistic abuse if you've gotten away, or you could be the one who's sabotaging each and every opportunity and good relationship that you come across because of the feeling of unworthiness growing up. So think about that one. There's also another one here, guys, and that's scapegoats feel like a burden many times to people. They don't want to bother people. They don't want to burden people. Therefore, they don't ask for what they need. They don't feel they're deserving of what other people have. So they try to do everything themselves. This happens a lot, especially with the overachievers that were scapegoated. They really were trained growing up, don't ask. You're not going to get it. Don't, it could be anything. Just ask to be listened to. They were denied that right. So they learned to not ask the family for anything. It's not going to happen. So they really are growing up self-sufficient with nobody to turn to, without a support system. They learn even in an intimate relationship not to speak up for what they need or what's important to them, because growing up, nobody listened anyway, right? So if this is you, if you grew up as a scapegoat, it is a very sad kind of position to have in the family. Other people are celebrated and encouraged in the family unit, but the scapegoat is really seen as a burden. Like, when are you going to leave? Nothing is acknowledged. And even later on, when they overachieve and try to prove and validate themselves to the family, they're not validated at all. They're gaslit. Their achievements never happened, or they're never mentioned. So you're really beating your head against a wall if you come from one of those families. There's really nothing you can do. I mean, they don't change. That's how they are. You keep expecting that one day they're going to realize you're a good person. One day they're going to realize that you're smart and you did all these things and had all these accomplishments. And unfortunately, most scapegoats find that they don't change, that they don't get that validation or recognition. They're still seen as the false narrative that was spread when they were growing up, whatever that is. The scapegoat's this or that, or crazy or stupid, or whatever it is that was the narrative. That's still into play, even if the scapegoat is decades and decades older and hasn't lived around the family for, 20, 30, 40 years, sometimes 50 years. The narrative doesn't change. You have to remember, in narcissistic relationships, the target is always the same to the narcissist. Now, that goes into a romantic relationship as well. They try to hoover you back and things because they don't recognize any changes in the scapegoat. They think the scapegoat is their property that they can abuse, that you're still the same person taking the abuse, and that you're always going to be there to be abused. Now, you know different than that. You know, you've educated yourself on narcissistic abuse. You know that you're not going to tolerate any type of abuse or put downs when it comes to dealing with them. And you're a different person because you've strengthened your relationship with the Lord. But to the narcissistic family unit, or any narcissist in a narcissistic relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship or a marriage or with your narcissistic family unit or coworkers, they still see you as that false narrative. You have not changed in their eyes. You could have changed everything about you. You could have grown, developed, and really self-examined yourself well and made the appropriate changes. But narcissists don't do that. They're not self-aware. They don't think they've done anything wrong. So they're always going to think you're the same person who they abused, and you're not. Hopefully you're not. And hopefully these videos are helping you realize that it's not you. You have the empathy and compassion of our Lord. Those are great qualities, guys. And the Lord makes people unique and different with special gifts. So people are to celebrate your gifts and your unique qualities and your big heart, not abuse that. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if this is you or anything that I said here resonated with you. And if you need prayer, please put your prayer request in the comments below. If you would like one-on-one Christian guidance, please email me at AngelHavenMinistry@gmail.com, and I'll be sure to get back to you on how to do that. And please follow on Facebook, Rumble, Quora, and X. And I will see you next time, guys. God bless.